Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SCRC Perspective on Transportation. This is the final SCRC perspective in this series for PWX at Home. So hopefully this is not everyone's first time, but this is the last in this series. We will be picking it up again in September with Fleet, but this is the last at PWX at Home. My name is Matt Harper. I'm an education manager with APWA, and I want to run through the Ring Central software that we're using right now. First of all, the chat feature. If you have any questions for our panelists, or if you want to bring up a good point for the audience, if you want to chime in the conversation, you feel free to use that chat window on the bottom of your screen there. You'll see that chat window. Click that and then choose who you want to speak with. You can choose it to send it to everyone or someone specific. Enter in your message and hit enter, and that'll go out to the group or individual that you want to speak with. Also, you can use the raise your hand feature. If you click on participants and look to the right there, you'll see the raise your hand feature. You can raise your hand and I'll be monitoring that, and I will call on you if you would like to speak up and speak to the group or the panel. Having covered that, I want to turn it over to the SCRC Committee Chair, Allison Abel.
Great. Thank you, Matt. My name is Allison Abel, and I serve as the chair of the Small Cities Rural Communities Committee. Small communities are defined by APWA as communities that serve 50,000 people and less. Over 75% of our APWA members represent communities that fall into this category. I would like to welcome everyone to the SCRC Perspective panel discussion. Each month during the PWX at Home format, representatives from small communities have been present to help us discuss a variety of issues. SCRC collaborates with other technical committees throughout the year through this PWX format to provide quality content in our panel discussions. This is our 12th and final month of the PWX at Home format. Kind of sad to see this end. I've been connected with a lot of you guys over the past year, but there's several opportunities for you guys, if you've missed any of the panel discussions over the last year, to go back to the APWA website and see from the beginning back in August when we coordinated with utilities and right-of-way and talked about some of the struggles that some of the small communities have had with utilities and right-of-way all the way through fleet management, snow operations and management, leadership and management, asset management, engineering and technology, water resources, solid waste, facilities and grounds, sustainability, and then last month we coordinated with the Emergency Management Committee and held a panel discussion discussing some of the emergency management issues that small communities face every day. So for videos of our past panel discussions, you can go out to the APWA website and find those. I believe those are under the PWX at Home. So go out there and take a look at those. As Matt mentioned, because of the overwhelming popularity of the panel discussions that we've hosted, we are looking at opportunities to continue this conversation. We will host panel discussions with the small city perspective in mind. These will be held every other month on the odd numbered months. So be on the lookout for those emails coming from APWA. We will be starting in September, and I believe that topic is going to be fleet management. So I look forward to seeing a lot of you guys there. We will also be hosting a technical session at PWX in St. Louis at the end of August. We will be providing opportunities for roundtable discussions so that we can all discuss our challenges and potential opportunities to learn from one another through these challenges and discussions. We look forward to continuing this conversation way beyond PWX and through these panel discussions. So we would love to hear some of your thoughts and ideas. So feel free to reach out to APWA staff or myself or anybody else on the SCRC committee. This month's panel discussion will focus in on transportation. Regardless of the size of the community, transportation plays a key role. Transportation takes different forms, whether it's supporting vehicular or pedestrian traffic. Small communities have fewer resources available for the construction as well as the maintenance of these transportation systems. Our panel will focus in on lessons learned from communities just like yours that have overcome similar struggles. We have 3 panelists with us today to share experiences serving small communities with respect to transportation. Our panelists include Magda Holloway, Forrest Jones, and Lori Diber. My name is Allison Abel, and I serve as the Public Works Director for a small community in Parkville, Missouri. We are 10 miles outside of Kansas City, Missouri. In Parkville, I serve 7,000 residents. Public Works in my community is the standard street and storm sewer. We also manage our parks and our sanitary sewer wastewater system. I maintain over 100 lane miles of roadway, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, that includes about 90 cul-de-sacs. I would like to invite the panelists to give their brief introduction of themselves and their communities. I would like to start with Forrest. If you could give us a brief introduction.
So good afternoon. Thank you. Again, my name is Forrest Jones. I work here in the town of Garner in North Carolina. We are a community of about 35,000 people. We adjoin the city of Raleigh, which is the capital city for our state, just to the south. So we often refer to as a bedroom community for the city of Raleigh. What does Public Works look like in our town? So we are a community that looks after streets and sidewalks, all things kind of transportation related. We also look after parks and grounds and facilities maintenance outside the facilities. We also look after our buildings, the actual building envelopes themselves, fleet, and then we also do solid waste through a contractor. So that is kind of what our Public Works looks like here. Some other unique things about Garner. We were the first community in North Carolina to become accredited through APWA's accreditation program. We did that back in 2013, have been reaccredited once and are working on our upcoming reaccreditation now set for next year. So that's a little bit about who we are.
Great. Well, thank you, Forrest. Lori, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Lori Diber, and I am the Client Relations and Director of Marketing for Civil Design, which is a small woman-owned civil engineering firm in St. Louis, Missouri. We have offices in Effingham, Illinois, and Louisville, Kentucky. So I can give you a little perspective on the bigger cities and then the smaller cities as well, and counties that we work for. I've been involved with APWA for about 20 years, been in the business for about 40. I serve as the local branch, the Gateway branch, which is just across the river from St. Louis, Missouri. It's a small branch of about 40 members, and I'm the president. And I'm also a delegate for Illinois, and I serve on the Small Cities and Rural Communities Committee.
Great. Thank you, Lori. Magda, you want to give us a little bit of a background into who you are, who you work for, what you do?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. I'm Magda Holloway. I'm currently the Public Works Director for the town of Wake Forest in North Carolina. I am north of Raleigh, so opposite side of Forest here in our geographical region. I previously held a position in a town called Sanford, which was south of Raleigh. I was the street superintendent there for about 11 years, population of about 36,000, so from a small town area. I then moved to our largest city in North Carolina in Charlotte and worked for 2 years and have been here for 3 years as the Public Works Director. I've been part of APWA since 2005. I have served on our board since 2008 and have had a variety of positions from directors to president of one of our technical divisions, and currently I'm the membership chair. I've done education as well. Here with our town, with Wake Forest, we have just recently outgrown small communities. Actually, in the last 2 weeks, we have jumped over 50,000 in population. Back in 2000, we were 8,000 strong. And so in the last 21 years, we have boomed from 8,000 in our community to roughly over 50,000 at this time. We add about 50 to 100 homes a month and are just blowing up as a subsidiary of Raleigh and people moving to our community. My public works staff last year was 80 strong. I have since lost our electric division, who has gone on to become their own department. And I also had engineering until last week. They have now become their own department. So we are now 44 strong, and we include fleet, urban forestry, our solid waste division, which is yard waste, and everything else is contracted out. We have streets, stormwater, with including our sidewalks and cemetery maintenance. And I also have administration. Because of how we accept roadways in town of Wake Forest, we only accept them after 85% completion of the homes have been built. We currently only have 140 miles of roadway, so fairly small on the infrastructure that we maintain.
I am very interested in learning more about that, Magda. So maybe we can touch on that later in the conversation. As you can tell with our panel, we've got a lot of great experience, a variety of experience to kind of help out with the transportation field. So give me a little bit more of an idea of how many people you have on your staff that help support you with transportation. Specifically, whether that's, administrative people in the office or field people. How many? I have six field workers that work in the streets division of Public Works. Magda, how many people do you have in your organization to support transportation?
In streets alone, we have 20 staff members. We have 3 crews that are devoted to stormwater, sidewalk, and pavement. And then we have a 4th crew that does our cemetery and right-of-way mowing. So 20 in total with that group. We have 2 administrative people who take all of our calls, including myself, and manage the citizen complaints that come through. We have 2 that support us in our engineering group with a transportation engineer, as well as a assistant engineer that is in there that helps us with all of the planning and transportation requests that come through. And then we also have a long-term planner that helps deal with the transportation here within our community and our planning department.
Well, and managing those citizen complaints is a full-time job, let me tell you. Lori, how many people do you have on your staff there at your consulting firm that assist small cities as an on-call type arrangement?
Well, we're about 85 team members across the 3 states. And I would say in our Effingham, Illinois office, we've got about 5 engineers and surveyors that handle those smaller communities. Effingham is 12,000 during the night and 24,000 during the day. So if you can picture that being, everyone's migrating to this city to work. I would say that's a good 5 to 8 that are working on the smaller cities.
Great. And Forrest, how many employees do you have that work in the various transportation fields?
So we have about 17 in total that are dedicated to transportation. That's broken up in between 2 different groups. Our street division, as we refer to them as, has 2 crews that are out doing your typical work, your stormwater, your sidewalks, and your pavement maintenance, your patching and things of that nature. That's their active role each day. They have a supervisor that provides oversight for that crew. Then we have a right-of-way division, we refer to them as, and they are focused on more of the landscape maintenance and I dare say the word beautification. I try not to say it much in town, around the right-of-ways, centered around mowing our right-of-ways, plantings, landscaping, and things of that nature. And then we also have a superintendent that serves over that division from a day-to-day maintenance activities. Other transportation-related staff that the town has that's outside of Public Works, we do have a long-range transportation planner who works on larger projects, really the development, getting them going. And then similar to Magda, I know she referenced they had just lost engineering in their group. We have a separate engineering department here in town that really focuses on new construction, things of that nature. So they, once it's developed, they hand it off to us. And there they have an assistant town engineer, and then who's probably really focused on that more so, on transportation related projects.
Great. Well, as I mentioned, I've only got 7,000 residents in my community, and most of my public works workers are on the field, out in the field, patching potholes and such. I am the only engineer on staff, so I have to hire a lot of my engineering, architecture, any of my consulting work that has to happen with outside forces. So, I utilize a lot of outside designers and contractors for some of the larger work and everything, and have strong connections with some of the local municipalities. So, Forrest, why don't you give us a little bit of insight into how you are able to do more with less? Do you have connections with some of these third-party outside consultants or other ways to expand your resources?
So we do. We rely on some third-party resources when you think about our pavement maintenance programming. So we, in about 3 years ago, we, like many communities, we have a pavement condition survey done. We really went to work with our council and started talking to them about ways we needed to invest in our road network. They were continually looking at us going, hey, we've got an aging road network. It seems like our dollars are not going as far as they used to. And really the only tool in the toolbox we used was the mill and fill, what's commonly referred to as mill and fill. So we were able to work with them and open that up. We had a pavement condition survey done. And then part of that, we also chose to use an online software to help us manage that network. So that was kind of done through an outside vendor for us here. Thus far, we're about 4 years into that. That's working very well for us and positive. We've seen good results from it. In our opening up the toolbox, using different tools, telling our story a little differently, that really helped our community and our elected body really get behind what we were doing and willing to let us try different things. And we could tell people, everyone's heard it. You've been in a community for a good while and people come to you and go, I've lived here for 30 or 40 years and you've never done nothing in my street except fill a pothole. When you come into my road, well, that can be true in many communities, but this hopefully will allow us to be able to get around to those networks and perform some type of preventative maintenance or rehab to it in about a 15-year process. So we're very excited about that. Other designers, really, we don't do a lot of design here in public works. That really happens over, like I said, in our engineering department, but we often do work with them if we need those services.
Yeah, and sometimes it's helpful to bring in the experts to do those presentations to the elected officials, because even though they see you every day, they trust you and everything like that, sometimes it's good to just bring in the experts to do the presentations. Magda, can you expand on some of the third-party specialties that you have to bring in outside of what you have on your public works staff?
Absolutely. Much like Forrest, we have relied heavily on our pavement condition surveys that we've gotten as well. In my previous role of another community, we did our survey very frequently, every 3 to 4 years, and were able to maintain our roadways just by using that survey when we didn't have a lot of funding available to go out and do that mill and fill, and just found it very beneficial to me there. When I came into this community, it wasn't quite as much of a focus. And so it had been several years since we had one. So we recently had one done and are starting to do some work there. I think because of our mentality of accepting roads after they have been built out and construction has been completed, that has really helped us, because we basically get a new road from the start with the houses being there. And so that has helped us with not having the funding available to focus on roadway projects. I think it's helped because the contractors and the developers have had to go back and do a lot of the fixes to the roads that I would have done in previous jobs. So that's been an absolute asset here. We do work very closely with NCDOT, which is our Department of Transportation here. We work closely with Wake County, who oversees our county administration, and then CAMPO, which is our capital area metropolitan organization, to reach out and get some consulting and feedback. We also have a list of on-call consultants that we keep on hand every 3 to 4 years. We do a call out for those so that we can do any miscellaneous design work that we need, or any engineering work that we would need. We're really building our engineering group here. We have had significant turnover in that area in the last 2 years, and we have some very strong individuals inside that I do believe will in time give us more of an opportunity to do some stuff in-house, but a lot of it is still handled outside. We also hire consultants to come in and do all of our large capital roadway projects or any greenway projects that we do. They oversee those for us.
Yeah, we also do on-call engineering services about every 3 years or so. We do a massive call out, and we've had anywhere from 40 to 50 consulting engineers respond to that, and it allows us to be able to have those smaller contracts. And if we need a parking lot designed or something on the small side that doesn't really warrant going out for a full RFQ, it's kind of a waste of time for the consultants to do those nickel and dime projects. So it's a lot easier for us to do it as one massive on-call, and we do it with all of the different engineering trades in mind, whether it's structural, geotechnical, transportation, traffic, you name it, we've got it on there, just so that we can have the ability to bring in those consultants as we need to. Whenever I first came on board almost 7 years ago to the city of Parkville, they actually did not do a very good job of evaluating the streets every year. We do a visual inspection of the streets, and it's myself as a licensed professional engineer, as well as my street superintendent, who has been with the city for over 34 years and knows everything about every street and what's below the surface. So between his expertise and my expertise, we go out and evaluate every street every year just so that we get a better feel. We are talking about going into possibly every 3 years having some vendor come in and help us evaluate the streets. But it's one of those things that we feel like we've got a better I feel we have a better handle on our streets than what a third party consultant would have. So right now we're just trying to figure out if it's necessarily worth the money or not. So let's go right into what types of transportation facilities you have in your communities, regardless of the size of the community. As I mentioned, transportation is a key role. It's an essential part of that community. We face different types of issues throughout our community. What does transportation look like in your community? What types of roadways? Do you have any bike lanes, traffic control measures, traffic calming measures, that kind of thing? And Magda, if you want to start off and give us an idea of what transportation looks like in your community.
We are a really good mix here in Wake Forest. We have the residential and commercial streets, thoroughfares, highways. We have a major interstate that runs right through the center of our town, and they are actually getting ready to do some widening and cut off a lot of our connectors to that so that they can increase the speed limit coming through our community. That is a project that will be undergoing in the next probably 5 years, and it will impact us significantly with the connectivity directly to our US 1 thoroughfare. We do a lot with sidewalks, and connectivity here has been very important for us in the past. Planning has focused a lot on it. We do have some gaps that we're trying to catch up on. Bike lanes have been important, and trails. We're now shifting though more towards 10-foot multi-use paths instead of sidewalks on both sides of the street, so that we can engage everyone in one area and have that surface to maintain its asphalt instead of the concrete. And it works well with the trees that are really important for us to maintain here. We have installed some specialized signs here on a case-by-case basis. Most recently, we've gone to ordering more fluorescent yellow pedestrian signs and crosswalk signs instead of the standard yellow. And we have even started using some illuminated stop signs and crosswalks because we've had some very political areas that needed a bit more attention. So it may be a little overkill for some of it, but trying to really just get better control in these areas. For traffic calming, we've used, they've gone with some streets that aren't quite as wide as we historically have had, and had on-street parking to try to slow vehicles down, but we're now finding it's causing us problems with our buses and our solid waste trucks and trash trucks trying to get through. So we're now reevaluating how that parking is going to be looking in the future. We do have street lights here in the town that we have, and we're upgrading to LED lights to help us with the cost and what that looks like. We have 3 different power companies that we deal with here, including one that's in-house. So we're all trying to retrofit our lights for LED lights. And we have traffic signals, but we don't maintain any at this time. But we are adding several in that we may pay for, and DOT helps maintain those signals right now. We also have 3 bus routes that we offer for our citizens. 2 of those are local and 1 is regional. And the 2 local ones we offer are free of charge for our citizens to be able to get around.
Great. Lori, you want to give us a little bit of an idea of some of the transportation systems you help your small communities with?
Well, I think I could piggyback a little bit on what Forrest had talked about earlier. We had helped out it's actually a county or a small township in the county that I grew up in. And they wanted to be proactive instead of reactive with their roadways. So I think they had about 54 miles of roadways, which is, not that many, but I traveled them a lot when I was a young girl, and I was pretty excited about the project. They didn't want to spend a lot of money. I think they didn't want to spend over $20,000, and we just told them we'd do it for $19,999. But we tried to do it very innovative, and we got a GoPro that we attached to the vehicle, and we collected a lot of data for them on their roadways to get them set up for a 5-year plan, transportation plan, so they could set up their funds and distribute those over the next 5 years. Look for the bad spots and not just filling the potholes and putting a Band-Aid on it. So and that was a very nice little project for us.
Great. Forrest, do you want to give us an idea of what types, specific types of transportation features you have in your community?
Sure, and I think I left this off earlier. So we're a community of about 110 centerline miles of road here in Garner, maybe 115. It changes literally by the month here. Just the rate subdivisions are coming in. So we too have a number of residential and commercial streets are most heavily where we are. We do have some thoroughfares and interstates. We too have an interstate that runs along our town. We have a U.S. highway that came through, I don't know, probably 50 years ago and split the town, kind of similar to what Magda talked about is happening with them now. We're cut off a lot of our connectivity, but we have pretty well recovered from that. But most of those interstates, obviously, and large U.S. highways are handled by DOT. We too have been a community that's been on the rise and really funding sidewalk construction heavily, probably for the past 15 to 20 years. We are finally they have seen our flags that we've been waving and jumping up and down to begin funding some money toward maintenance of those sidewalks, because that's something that's really been neglected. Really just asking you to kind of absorb that and figure it out. But we have finally got some funding for that. So we're very excited about that. Bike lanes, we have very few of those right now, but that is something that is on the rise for us here. Like many communities, we pride ourselves on our park systems. We have a lot of trails, some greenway connectivity we're working on. We have made some improvements to a number of our crosswalks. Most of those crosswalks have been centered around our greenways and our park systems. We have 2 large parks that are situated right across the street from each other. And then they also connect out to one of the NCDOT roads where a greenway trail comes through. So we have done some illuminated crosswalk signs and things of that nature there. So we're very happy about that. Like many communities, we have all of our signage, we provide all that. Street lights here, most of our street lights are owned and operated by Duke Energy. We obviously pay those bills and report them, and we did the LED conversion about 5 years ago. We did some math on that and figured out it would return its investment to us pretty quickly. So we went ahead and we've already completed that. Probably 3 years ago is when we completed. I think it was around a 2-year project. So that is a little bit about us. We do have some traffic control, and this might be getting into the next question a little bit. We have a traffic calming policy where we have not really designed a lot of that into our roadway network up front. So we have a number of communities now that come to us wanting to have some type of traffic calming measure put in their neighborhood. I would tell you about 10 years ago, we put in some speed humps in a couple of our communities, and we are now going around just here in the past few weeks and replacing those with speed tables, which are very much more appreciated from a maintenance perspective, as well as I believe the residents in the neighborhoods will enjoy them a lot better, because we heard a lot of complaints from people going, cars can line up between the speed humps or they straddle them and they just miss them. So it's not effective, but our speed tables will certainly be much more effective, we believe. So that's a little bit about what our network looks like.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, in my small community, we've got areas that surprisingly don't have sidewalks. So we, especially on some of our highways through town, you're finding pedestrians walking on the highway, which is not safe. So we've been able to secure some federal money to do some of the complete streets upgrades to our highways so that we can provide bike lanes and sidewalks associated with the streets. As far as any of our safety and traffic control signage, we usually hire a lot of that stuff out. We do a little bit of our own installation of the signs, but anything that's big in nature, we try to, have a contractor do that. Our streetlights are managed by KCP&L or Evergy now. And traffic signals, we don't have any traffic signals on our routes. Those are all on the Missouri state highway routes. So we don't actually have to do anything as far as our traffic signals. Forrest, you kind of touched on some of the innovative ways and elements of public works. Can you kind of expand a little bit more on some of the other innovations that you've had in your community as far as some of the electric bicycles and scooters, pervious pavement, 3D crosswalks? Can you expand a little bit more on, some of those innovative measures that you've taken in your community?
So we have not actively taken a ton of other innovative measures right now. We're oddly enough working with our downtown group to perhaps do some of the 3D crosswalks. We're taking a look at that right now. They're actually working through with some artists trying to figure out exactly what we want to do in our downtown area. We've just built and opened up our Garner Rec Center, our recreation center. So we've put a big emphasis in our downtown in the past few years, trying to encourage more business there, more foot traffic, and obviously hoping that rec center will serve as a vital component of that. Electric bicycles and scooters, we do not have a lot of those in our community right now. Electric charging vehicle stations is something we are, like many communities, just getting, well, I shouldn't say many communities, but we are getting going in that environment, trying to make it become a standard in many of our new facilities that we build and construct is one of the things we're looking at. And we're also looking at going back and retrofitting a number of other buildings that we've built, say, in the past 8 or 10 years and adding those back there. Obviously, a lot of our private development shopping centers and things of that nature, they have the charging stations. But I would say our town's probably a little bit behind the curve on that piece.
Well, and I think that's the story of a lot of small towns. We typically are a little behind the curve. So that's why we're having these kind of discussions to see if anybody's out there implementing some of these things. Lori, do you have any experience with some of these more innovative strategies associated with transportation? I know you touched on the GoPro and utilizing that for some of the pavement analysis. Do you have any other experience with the innovative strategies that you utilize to help out some of your cities?
Sure. We do a lot of overlays and the curbs and gutters and the sidewalks. It seems like a lot of these smaller communities are understanding that how important those sidewalks are and the ADA compliance, and they're willing to spend that money or go out for grants to help fund that. We actually did a sidewalk inventory for a smaller community in St. Louis. Believe it or not, there's like 100 small municipalities within the St. Louis County. So this was a small community that we went out, we did the GIS, we used that to take inventory on all the sidewalks to make sure that if there was ones that they weren't ADA compliant on, and how they, to set up their process to get these all replaced. So I think that was several years ago, but I think they're all in compliance now and completed. We've done a lot for a lot of the counties, going out and collecting their culverts and intersections and pipe sizes. And something that we like to do is they don't necessarily hire us to do it. We might hire an intern from a local college, which is helpful to give back to our community. And that county might also hire an intern to send them out. So it's a great experience for them. It keeps the costs down, and they get to work in the community that they grew up in.
Great, thank you. Magda, can you go through some of I know you're a larger community than the rest of us, but what kind of innovative strategies have you implemented with regard to transportation? You're muted.
So sorry. We did try the electric scooters a couple of years ago, and they were taken back out of the community right before COVID hit. We didn't find that it made a huge impact with us. There weren't a lot of people using it because so many people here have bicycles and like to walk wherever they go, because we are still somewhat of a smaller community with little niches of neighborhoods. So I do not think it's something that we're willing to entertain at this time and bringing them back. We've done some of the decorative crosswalks in our area, just in our downtown. It looks nice, but we've already had to rip them up in the last year and a half since they've been placed, and had issues of trying to match things back up. And although it's beautiful, the markings down there that we tried to implement have almost felt like it was almost a waste at the time. And so we're very selective about the type of markings that we're putting down previously. We do not allow speed humps or speed tables anymore. As we go through and resurface streets or do maintenance on roadways, we're taking them out. We have just found that they have caused a strain to our emergency responders trying to get there, and the response time is down, plus a lot of vehicle wear and tear with low riders that are particularly popular in this area. We did adopt a traffic calming policy recently back in 2019. It helped us promoting some other options such as islands or medians that would help slow some of that down, like I had mentioned before, with putting more roadway parking in, because we do have smaller, denser lots where there's not a lot of parking available on the properties. So utilizing that to try to slow some things down in our residential areas. We do have EV charging stations at our town hall, and we recently just implemented some at a large park that we have here. We did a joint venture with our co-op. They wanted to get on the map, basically, so they installed it for us for free, and they gave us 2 years free service to have it in place, and we didn't have to pay for anything for it, just provide the locations, because it helped put us on the Tesla maps. We had to have 2 in place somewhere in our community. So that was a big advantage for us, and we were very excited to get that. We've also looked for some funding to try to get some available in our depot lot, which is downtown as well. And we are now moving towards making it a requirement for new commercial developments to make sure that they have those installed at their facilities as well.
We have a lot of great plans to do a lot of great things, and electric bicycles and scooters is something that we've discussed. I have some hesitation about it just because I think it's going to take away from some of the infrastructure opportunities in our downtown area. I think that it's going to cause more issues than it's going to be opportunities. Even though we are a college town, I think that maybe the opportunities should be closer to the college campus than in our downtown area. I'm not a fan of the 3D crosswalks. Just personally, I think that they're a little bit of a distraction, and I don't know. I'm just old school whenever it comes to pavement markings and everything. I'm going to wait until there's more data on the 3D crosswalks to see how effective that they are. Speed humps, bumps, speed tables, all of that stuff. I Again, there's just too much data out there that it's going to slow down the emergency response. It's going to cause more damage to the vehicles. I'm hearing exactly the same things. So we're trying to be a little bit more creative. One of the things that we did, through a partnership with one of the subdivisions, we actually installed a speed monitoring sign that gives you real-time speed data as far as how fast you're going. And also the sign yells at you whenever you're going too fast. So we were able to install a couple of those in our one of our neighborhoods through a partnership with the subdivision. So that has been a success. I think that's more of a success than trying to put in a speed bump that is going to end up being more trouble than what it's worth. You know, there's maintenance issues with that as well. We are looking at doing some sort of electric charging stations through a partnership. So hopefully there's going to be more to come on that one. So I have a lot of the stuff on my to-do list, but actually getting it across the finish line has been a challenge for me. So I definitely like these discussions to hear what other people have gone through. So small communities have limited access to funding. What types of funding do you guys have available within your communities to assist with these transportation related issues? Magda, what kind of funding do you use, whether it's through sales tax that you receive through your general fund or any outside funding sources?
We allocate $3 million a year for our street budget, which includes everything that we do there. We also allocate 1.5 cents to the transportation projects, which has given us about $1 million in our upcoming budget. I think we're very fortunate because of the size that we are now, but from previous municipalities that I've been in that we were much smaller, we would use our Powell bill funding specifically for large roadway projects instead of sidewalks and patching here and there. We would specifically take that funding that was given to us and designate it for large stormwater rehab projects, resurfacing, anything that was major that wasn't built into our budget from the previous year. We try to go after grants whenever there's opportunity for it. We've used multiple grants and funding options there. We also get LAP funding through our Campo and NCDOT that we've put towards a lot of projects that we have. And then we do bond referendums every, I want to say maybe 4 to 5 years we'll go through. We've got another one coming up in 2023 where we're very specific and targeted to what the community wants. We may survey and see out of these 10 projects which are most important to you. And then we go through with the bond referendum to try to nail down 3 or 4 of the major projects.
Okay, great. Lori, do you have any experience in writing any of the grant applications or seeking some of the grant opportunities with some of your clients in the small cities?
I have not written any grants, but we have someone here in our Effingham office who is retired from the Illinois Department of Transportation, who is very familiar with grants, and she worked with local roads. She has been writing some grants for our counties for GIS. So mapping, a lot of, like I said, their culverts and roadways, and they're using those funds. And I think they runs between $50,000 and like $90,000 is what those grants are. But actually, I think there was a tax that was not passed recently, so Illinois put a little halt to those. But most of the funding comes from the tax, the fuel tax that was passed a couple of years ago, which is trickling down to all the municipalities and the counties and townships.
Great. Forrest, what kind of funding sources do you use for your transportation projects?
So yes, a lot of our stuff comes through general fund, obviously. We also receive what we refer to as Powell bill dollars here, which is much of like a gas tax, if you will. We receive some of that as well. However, that funding has probably begun to wane over the few years in relationship to the percentage it covers. We operate on about a $3.5 million budget each year for our operations and street maintenance activities. We also receive some municipal bond programs for our stuff. We do not have anything dedicated in that bond program for transportation specifically related to maintenance. So a lot for large road networks where we're improving a large project. We have some of that identified in there. We also use our vehicle tag fees. So that's really what probably the driving force when we went back out a number of years ago and kind of began to open up the toolbox and go aggressively after our pavement preservation work. That's the real driver for there. And we were basically able to double our funding efforts by doing that on a consistent basis. Grants kind of ebb and flow for us a little bit. We have restarted back up actively looking grants. I think a lot of that tends to have to do with whom your finance director is at the time and their position on grants. We found some of the grants really would take a lot of town staff time and resources. And in the words of some, they would say, and that's why I say it really lends on what your direction of your administration at the time, as well as your finance folks. Was the grant really worth it with the amount of time and energy we've had to spend on reporting requirements? And I think some of the grant opportunities are getting a little less on some of that reporting, but we're mostly heavily related to vehicle tax, vehicle tags, fees, and general fund dollars.
Yeah, there is no such thing as free money. I wish there was, but there's a lot of strings attached. There are a lot of reporting that has to occur and a lot more work that goes into it. So sometimes it's worth it. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not. I'm going to take a pause here for a minute. I know we've got a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to take a pause here and go through some of that. One of the questions is, where do park pathways, greenways, trails, and urban forests fall into your future transportation planning efforts, especially with the new definitions and interpretations of federal infrastructure funding plans? Does anybody have any experience or want to speak to park pathways, greenways, trails, and urban forests? I know from my perspective, we're trying to get a greenway linkage plan through the Kansas City metropolitan area. We just completed a new trail connection that connects Kansas City, Riverside, Parkville, and eventually we're going to have additional trail connections out west so that we can basically connect Kansas City through Platte County. So that we can have the bicycle trails, the walking trails, that kind of thing. So we are a work in progress. Magda, do you have any experience in that?
I deal a lot with urban forestry, not so much on the paths and the trails. I know we do a lot of soft trails here that we allow organizations to come in and build, and we won't maintain them. They'll come in and actually clear out or provide paths that go between our greenways that exist. We do have a pretty extensive greenway plan in place of connecting us from north to south and east to west. From the urban forestry perspective, we pride ourselves in a 45% tree canopy in our community. And so anytime there's a project going in, it's centered around trees. How many street trees can we get in? And then we focus on how many trees can we get on the private side, and beautifying, as little as I like to use that word, but using the trees to really beautify the area and provide necessary shade and qualities of the oxygen, the levels that it provides, and the beauty that it gives us for the community. When we do have developments going on, it's often said that we're losing the forest out of our Wake Forest, and they don't realize just how much we focus on making sure that if you're truly taking out specimen trees or able to preserve those specimen trees, what that does for us in our future. So we have 2 staff members that are solely devoted to urban forestry and maintaining our right-of-ways and making sure that we have this canopy that remains within the forest, and lining these different trails for various different reasons.
Forrest, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I think, as Magda referred to, there is a greater greenway plan here in our region, and we certainly are actively working to try to make as many connections as we can. An area of focus for us has been anytime we look at new development, we always ask the question from a development side and have the developer build it, and then we'll oftentimes have some hand in maintaining that. So we're actively looking at where can we make those connections. Not much on the urban forestry side of things here in Garner, but that's kind of the short answer to what we do for transport for greenways and trails.
Okay. There's another part to this question. Are you beginning to utilize and consider more sustainable solutions like porous pavement, green stormwater control solutions? I know that, we try with each of our developments, we have a stormwater quality requirement in addition to stormwater detention requirements. So with the developments, they are required to do a certain amount of stormwater treatment. With that, from the city's perspective, other than a few native vegetative areas, I'm not sure that we really have walked the talk as far as the green infrastructure. Magda or Forrest, do you guys have any information you'd like to share as far as green infrastructure?
Go ahead, Magda.
I don't have anything at this time. We're really just starting to build our program and have a great engineer on staff that joined us a year ago that's really helping us kind of dig out of some of the problems that we've had with our stormwater related issues. So this is probably where we're the weakest.
Well, and with public works, sometimes it's just maintaining what you've got. That's the struggle every day, and trying to, some of those innovations and some of the new features, it's just going to come as it comes. So hopefully in about a year, whenever we have another panel discussion about this, you'll have more to share. Another question is, who maintains all the miles of greenways, multi-use paths, mowing, light bill, pavement management? I know that, between my park staff and my public works staff I've got a total of 7 people in parks and 6 people on streets. Between that staff, they mow various areas, whether it's park related, right of way. Whenever we go to improve areas along a state highway, we enter into a maintenance agreement with the state. In order for us to get the funding that we need, sometimes we have to take over maintenance of some of those green spaces, which includes trails and the green space in between. Do you guys have anything to add on who maintains the miles of greenways and multi-use paths?
We here in Public Works, we do that, and we mostly do that through what we refer to as our public grounds group, because oftentimes those trails and pathways are in parks. So that group here in Public Works looks after those. And obviously we pay all bills.
We have a completely different department that handles all of our parks maintenance. There's actually 12 on staff that maintain all the mowing for our facilities, the buildings, and all of the greenways and the grass along the greenways. We do have staff on hand that help us with right-of-way mowing, but none of that's along the greenways themselves. It's all done in a different department. And the billing, we pay for most of the billing here with Public Works.
Great. And I'll go through one last one before we go back to our regularly scheduled program here. Have folks been managing parking challenges as populations grow, especially in downtown areas or business centers? On-street parking, meters, lots, parking decks, enforcement. I receive complaints all the time about parking in different areas, and we're more reactive than we are proactive, unfortunately, in this area. Forrest or Magna, do you guys have any challenges as some of these populations grow in these business centers? Do you have any feedback that you'd like to share with the group?
I don't have anything to really feedback at this time. And like I say, our parking, we don't really own and operate any parking lots here in our town, other than our downtown area, and we have currently adequate parking down there. I'm sure it'll be a challenge for us as we continue to develop that downtown area.
Yeah, it's kind of a balanced situation because you either have not enough parking or you need to protect that green space and not build any more parking lots. So it's definitely a balance there. I'd like to go into some of the policies. I know we've kind of touched on this throughout the program, but public service means creating public policy and support for the community. What types of public policies have you created for your community with respect to transportation? Specifically, we had talked about, maybe some of the greenway management plans, the forestation plans that Magda talked about. But, how do you handle some of the complaints that you receive? Do you guys have any sort of policy for traffic control devices if somebody comes in and requests a speed bump. Do you guys have anything in place as far as programs or policies?
So we here in Garner, one of the biggest things we have that if people come to us wanting us to, help slow cars down in their communities, we have had a traffic calming policy here for a number of years. We just revised it back in 2019 again. I would say when we revised our plan originally, I won't say it was designed this way intentionally because I was not part of that design, but it was very difficult to meet requirements to get something put in your neighborhood, to get something done. Our most updated plan we have put out in traffic calming has really probably been a little more headed the other way. I won't say it's very easy to meet those requirements, but we've made them a lot more attainable, and we've opened up the options for them. So we'll see how that plays out for us.
Great. Magda, do you have any policies that you'd like to share that you've developed in your community?
Sure. I did want to circle back to the last question that you had about the growth of the community and parking. We have actually gone into our downtown area and created more one-way streets to try to get some additional angled parking in. We've taken 2 of our smaller streets and done that in the last year, and we're also entertaining the idea of a parking deck. We acquired some property fairly reasonable for our area and hoping that a developer will come in and do a joint venture with us where we can get a parking deck built in that area without having to fund it because we don't have the funding available to do such a large project. So that's in the works for what we're doing. As far as policies and programs, we use a citizen complaint system that has been very popular from the time we were a small community to the growth that we have now. It's called See, Click, Fix. And we were going to do away with it 3 years ago when we went with a new work order system, but the community loved it and used it so much that we've kept it on. We're able to assign it very reasonably to other staff and other departments. You can see the trail and the history of what's been done with the complaints, and we can respond back to them through the program. They've now ventured out and become bigger and become Civic Plus. They have a work order system that's tied into that. So we're looking at how can we make our work order system compatible to the citizen complaint system that we get. But we get a lot of that feedback from the public. We've also taken our work order system and turned it into a system that our internal staff can use. So instead of the police department knowing that there's a light out or knowing that there's an issue, a pothole or a street sign that's blocked, they actually take that web portal and submit work order requests to us. They're an extra set of eyes. We have 100 police officers on staff, and they're able to see things that we may not have seen most recently. So they submit work orders through the system as well, instead of just picking the phone up and giving us a call. So we're able to track things easier. And when they're on night shift, they can get it submitted quickly. So that has been very advantageous for us to use internal staff as well. We do have forms available on our website if citizens want to make requests for traffic calming or even try to do studies within their neighborhoods. We do find often that it's the perception of the eye that they're going much faster than they really are. But we do move a radar around that we have. It was funded by our police department. And this year we're going to be purchasing a second unit because it is often requested, but probably 80 to 90% of the time, we don't find that there is a speeding issue. It's just right in front of their house. They may be going faster than they think, and it becomes a problem for them. But we've enjoyed doing the traffic studies because it really gives us a true picture of what's going on.
Yeah, and everybody is a traffic engineer, it seems like. I know there was a question in the chat box about contact information for the people on the panel. Matt Harper did include his contact information. If you would like to reach out to any one of the panelists, feel free to reach out to Matt Harper and he can provide that information. I've got one last question that I wanted to talk about is lessons learned. We all continue to grow as communities, and with these experiences, we definitely have some lessons learned. Can you share some of the good and the bad that you've lessons learned that you've had within your organizations regarding transportation? Magda, I'm going to start with you.
Being from a smaller community and then joining this community, the main things that stick out to me is trying to get those dollars to stretch and thinking outside the box of ways that you can do preventative maintenance on your roadways. I did a lot of demos. I brought a lot of people in that would do things for us and shared it with our community as well as surrounding communities to try different ideas, because mill and fill just wasn't cutting it for us. And I was able to extend our dollars a good bit by trying different preservation methods and finding what worked for us. With the rapid growth that we've had here, we have just not been able to keep up with the roadways in the street system. We've got some very congested areas, and I believe now that we're behind the growth and still seeing a lot of it, we're trying to encompass that now with our plans moving forward. But it's really hard to recover once you've built your roadways or 2-lane roads, and all of a sudden you need 6-lane in that area. So we're finding that we're having to struggle to catch back up with our growth. And from the smaller community where we accepted streets as soon as they were put in, I do see now that method that we had in place cost us a lot of money as a town. There would be streets that maybe nothing would be built on for 2 or 3 years, maybe even 5 years, that would completely deteriorate, and I would have to rebuild them using different methods, full depth reclamation, and it was astronomical for us to have to pay for it as a small community. And so in Wake Forest, where they have set it up that we don't accept roads until there's 85% completion of build out, I just have found where the roads would have failed for me 10 years ago, they're failing now, and the developer's paying for it instead of the taxpayer. And so they tend to take more care of the road. They tend to build it more appropriately in the beginning, and they try not to sneak around us or get away from us if we're not there to inspect in that moment, because they know they're going to have to maintain it up until the point that we accept it. We do a 1-year warranty period from the date that we look at it, and they make all the changes that we need. And then within that 1 year, if there's any more failures, they fix it. And then we've got a brand new community with either new asphalt that's been put in, an overlay, or the patchwork that's been completed, or any structure failure that would have happened. Even pavement markings that have come up, any issue that we've had. Some of these phases might take 5 years to build, and they're maintaining it instead of us, so that we can take our dollars and use elsewhere.
Okay, great. Lori, do you have any lessons learned from some of the communities that you serve?
Well, I think one of the biggest struggles that we have is the older women and men that just don't understand the importance of the projects, and how we have to just educate them on those processes, and how important it is to the community to fix those roads and the sidewalks and curbs and gutters, and I think that's one of our biggest struggles. But we've got some very patient engineers who take the time to educate them, and it seems to all come out good in the end. And once they understand, I think that's one of our biggest struggles.
Great. And Forrest, do you have any last thoughts or lessons learned with respect to transportation?
So I would say the in a simplest way I know to put it is don't get discouraged. When you first go at something, oftentimes our council's not bought on stuff when we came the first time, but be persistent. And that it may not be the first or second time or even the third time you ask for it, but you need to consistently continue to come back to it. I think someone in the chat had asked, how long did it take with that sidewalk? Well, I don't want to give a year number on that because it might be discouraging for them, but really it took a good while. And unfortunately for us, when you start telling that story and just finding more ways and listening and keeping that dialogue going, but don't go once, and when they tell you no, never come back with it again. Continually, kind of every so often, come back and try different ways, and eventually you'll connect.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. And thanks again for participating in the SCRC Perspective panel discussion focused on transportation. I hope you enjoyed the panel and have a better understanding of the struggles that small communities have. I have enjoyed the panel, and if you have enjoyed this panel and want to watch others, there are recordings available on APWA's website. We hope to see you in St. Louis for the SCRC Perspective session at PWX in August. We will also be hosting those panel discussions every other month, continuing the discussion. If you, it has been an amazing year facilitating this panel discussion for you. I would like to thank Matt Harper and the rest of the APWA staff for giving the small communities a platform to help one another. I've learned so much from each and every panel member that has participated in this panel discussion. Thank you so much. Matt, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I think you wrapped it up very nicely there, Allison. A big thank you to Magda, Lori, and Forrest for sharing their experience and their stories with us today. Allison, again, thank you as usual for being our moderator and sharing your experiences every month for the past 12 months. So I hope to see everyone next month. Well, yeah, next month in late August when PWX kicks off. And like Allison said, this has been recorded and will be on the APWA PWX at Home Transportation webpage. So go there, and if you want more information about the PWX session for SCRC, visit the website or visit the app when it is made available on your cell phones. I hope to see everyone in St. Louis.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.